which might give you an idea why Arabic world is in such a mess, yet Turkey is a strong republic, no matter how much of difficulties we are still experiencing with our democracy. There are sometimes double standards used in this country, right? Actually, they call it post-truth era nowadays, right? Nobody tells you the truth, right? Neither Erdogan nor the rest of the people. Still, the recent elections, which ended up with the opposition party, Atatürk's party, in other words, winning 3 major cities, means that democracy is still functioning in this land, which is not the case. And please remember, Turkey has the oldest surviving democracy in the Middle East, right? Since 1923. We started with our democracy long before the rest of the Arabic lands. Yes, the Arabic countries like Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, Jordan, they took their independence of us, right? Ottoman Turkish Empire at the turn of the century, provoked by British, French, Italian, but only to end up where? To become a mandate of British or Italians or French. Until when? Until 1940s. Until 1940s, there was no Iraq, or no Syria, or no Palestine in the way that you know of them today. And first they wanted to get rid of us, but after we left, after the First World War, they are in this terrible mess, even up to the single day. I don't only blame them. There are, of course, other powers at work in the Middle East because of the factor of oil, and so on and so forth. Complicated, I'm not going to go into the details. But Arabic people, they did not have an Atatürk as we had. So it's our pure luck to have a world leader like that of him, who had seen far ahead of his time. And now I can answer your question.
Great stuff. Thank you very much. What influenced Atatürk to stand out and to be the kind of person that he was?
Very good question. Bill asks, what really influenced Atatürk to stand out, to become a leader as he was? First of all, the sentimental answer to your question. He was a man meant to be. That was in his genealogy, let's say, by birth, given to, I would say, he is made like that, right? Very charismatic personality. Second, Ottoman Turkish army was always a container of reformational movements as against the monarchs, as against the sultans anyway. So, he was educated within the military academy of the Ottoman Turkish sultans, despite the fact that it is an army serving the Sultan. Reformational movements always emerged out of the army as well. Third, he was born in Thessaloniki, which is a city in North Greece today. But at the time, 1882, Thessaloniki was a part of our empire, Ottoman Turkish Empire. Some of you, I'm sure, have been to Thessaloniki. Thessaloniki was a very cosmopolitan city with Muslims and Jews and Christians and all kinds of people living there. So the melting pot of Thessaloniki opened him up to more of the world vision than getting kind of stuck with a tiny little, town in Central Asia Minor. Plus, he was also sent as military attaché to Bulgaria and also to Berlin, and he was a man who mastered French and German, Arabic and Turkish, and he read a lot. He read a lot also about French Revolution, and he was also influenced a lot with the ideas of French Revolution. So it's this, on one hand, he's a man made to be a leader by birth, it's in him. On the other hand, he also had this wonderful education and the right city to grow up. I would call him, among the men of the world like this, Mahatma Gandhi, who's one of my heroes, George Washington, another of the heroes, I don't know if you agree with me, from your country, or Nelson Mandela. Is among this type of men who had an influence on earth. And please remember, despite the fact there is a rather interesting relationship between the Arabs and the Turks, like and dislike, I would say in this case. I wouldn't say love and hatred. This will be the wrong way of expressing it. You know, there are Arabic brothers and sisters. But on one hand, when you talk to an Arab in the Middle East and talk about the Ottoman Turkish rule in the Arabic lands, oh, they'll say the Turks did not contribute too much during the empire times. You know, we were ruled by them. They were just the conquerors, that's it. But then there are some intellectuals in the Arabic world, after having seen the mass, what is happening right now in the Middle East, some of them, not all of them, would also say, maybe it would have been better if the Turks would have stayed in the area than this mess happening right now today. So, on one hand, Arabs in the Middle East would look up to the Turk. Why? Because after the mess of the First World War, we emerged as a strong republic with the democracy and far more modern than the rest of the Arabic world. But on the other hand, they look down on us because we ruled their countries for 600 years. That is the very typical relationship between the ruler and the subjects, and I understand. Yeah. So those are the dynamics between the Arabs and the Turks. When you come to the dynamics with the Iran, it's a little bit different. We could never ever conquer Iran. Why? Iran was equipped with another glorious historical background. First, the Persian Empire, right? Cyrus, who gave liberty, King Cyrus, right? Liberty to the Jews, or other Persian kings. Do you remember them? You know, Xerxes and everybody else. Anyway, sorry, Darius and everybody else. And then they had the Sassanid Empire, and then they have the Sassanid Empire, and then they had the Safavid Empire. And Safavid Empire of Iran was always rivals to the Ottoman Turkish Empire. When you have a tradition of a major empire ruling over your land for centuries long, inevitably you're gonna emerge from this background with solid historical roots, which is not easily shaken. I don't agree with the regime in Iran right now, Khomeini regime, but why are they so strong and stubborn? Because they have a tradition of ruling in the area for centuries long, which grounds them in such a way, which is the case for the Ottoman Turks or the modern Turks today. You know, for example, is this interesting to you?
Yes.
There was this one very interesting incident when I met this American scholar who used to teach at the American school in Cairo. You know, there is an American college now. He was teaching their Ottoman Turkish history. And I said to him, since you're teaching Ottoman Turkish history, why didn't you consider coming to Turkey, to one of the colleges in Turkey? Because Istanbul is the place. He said, you know what? I'll tell you the truth. Because you were the subjects in the area, and the rest of the Arabic world were, because you were the rulers, in the area, and the rest of the Arabic world were your subjects, you have a slightly different stamp in your land, which is like maybe a ruling complex kind of thing, if I may say. I don't know how to define it. He said it so well then, which made sense. You know, he said you're more of a people of a very, strong stamp. Whereas in Egypt, because they have been the subjects for so long, although they have their own kingdoms here and there, I feel more of at home here, more modest of a context apparently for him. At least this is what he told me. I mean, I don't say we're people nose in the up, but don't misunderstand me. But when you are a ruling power in the world, there's a different stamp in your culture, and when you are subjects, I guess there's another stamp in your culture. That's what he told me. Who knows? But I don't want to give the wrong impression about Turks. I think we are perfectly hospitable people, and because of the stamp of the Sufis, the wise ones in our faith, we also know that the real boss is the creator, nobody else. Okay, any more questions you might have? Question by Will. Did Erdogan start more moderately?
His name's Miles.
Miles, I'm sorry, Miles.
You can call me some guy.
No, I wouldn't. Miles, I'm sorry. Miles said, did Erdogan start modestly and moderately and then moved more conservatively? And I won't use the term fundamentalism, because he's not. I mean, you look at his wife, look at his children. his children, all of them are educated in the United States. They're just, driving all those Jeeps, and they're all dressed, with good Christian, or this and that, on full makeup, and so on and so forth. So I don't think after having tasted the pleasures of a modern life like that, any of his family or his followers, close followers, will go back to the chador, the burqa, and the very fundamental ways of life. The danger is, because there are sub-underground groups who would look for fundamentalism, I feel if there is a lack of power in his government, then the ropes would get into the hands of another subgroup, and that will be dangerous. This is why I wouldn't vote for Erdogan. But anyway, yes, he started with a very, very modest and moderate start. And this is the dynamic. I mean, this is going to be a little long, but do you have the patience, or are you curious to know how Erdogan came to power in this land?
Yes, yes, yes.
I know it's a bit longer than one can listen to, but let me do this and then I'll give you the time, and then we'll do again later. Once Atatürk introduced us into reforms, 1923 to 1938, all of a sudden, from a traditional empire, we're turning into a modern republic. This continued until up to, let's say, 1970s, 80s, and even 90s. At the time, the well-educated elite of the big cities in Turkey, they took control of the government's jobs. Jobs of power. The presidents, prime ministers, the cabinet, ministries, they will be all, kind of composed of the well-educated elite who are followers of Atatürk. The rest of the people who lived in the countryside, peasants, farmers, they were very happy with the ideals of Atatürk, reforms of Atatürk. They even gave hand to him. In time, those agriculturalists in the small villages, they started moving into the big cities in search of jobs, in search of a better life, better education, and they became bourgeois, right? So you have this more modest, more conservatively oriented Muslim Turk coming into the big city context, becoming bourgeois, becoming educated, and he asks, why are we not eligible for those government jobs? Why are we not claiming our power and our role in government? This is what made Erdogan in 2002, as he won the elections for the first time because he's one of them, comes from a countryside family, was able to get a good education. He represents more of a conservative Muslim faith, and when he came into power, all those other parties in Turkey were so corrupt, and they were doing a lot of promises and not fulfilling their promises, including the party I vote, Atatürk's party. Inflation, and not a good economy. So when he came into power, he said, I'm going to be an embracer. I'm going to heal the economy. I'm promising you a white page, no bribery, no corruption. Together with Muslim faith implanted here and there to collect not only the conservative votes of the countryside people who are now bourgeois, but also to take the votes from the party of Atatürk and others, the modernists. And he managed it. He worked hard. He did some good services. He did some of the most important projects of this country, like a sub-water channel connecting Asia to Europe in Istanbul, good roads like this, bringing a lot of foreign investors. But he has made one mistake. Instead of helping with the agriculture and production, he brought too much of foreign investors, and this is how our economy healed. Bringing foreign investments to Turkey is not bad, but alongside with it, if we could have also emphasized the production of better technologies, building our own made cars, building our own technologies for everything, for factories and everything, then it would have been better. Once the war started on our borders, in Iraq, in Syria, what happens? Investors go back. So economy collapses. So after 19 years of being elected over and over and over again, now he is leading a country with a terrible economy, a lot of corruption in his government, and he's losing his votes, and opposition are now taking over, which I believe to be a healthy thing to do. As a matter of fact, although I would never vote for him, I believe he fulfilled a certain role, and that is releasing the tension between the modernist, reformist followers of Atatürk and the more conservatist who has the background of the agriculturalist who became bourgeois in the city. Am I making sense? It's like an interesting dynamic between the conservatists and the modernists.